Hey, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. I have a really good long term friend with me here today, and his name is Dave Reed. Welcome, Dave.
Hey, Jane. So glad to be here.
Now, many of our listeners likely know you and the story of eSpeakers and Art Berg, but I want to start there because I feel as though we on this podcast have not given proper props to the amazing man that Art Berg was. So he was the founder of eSpeakers, but tell a little bit about like his story and when you all came together.
Sure. Yeah, you know what? I love to talk about art. It's always a little bit melancholy, and we're recording this in February 2022, and this marks actually the 20th year anniversary of Art's passing. He
Mm,
passed away in February 2002.
I find that so
So it's
hard.
yeah, and it's tough, and it's still, you know what, we talk about art here all the time. We think about art, and hope that what we've done with what he started, that he'd be proud of
Mm.
what has happened with it. But
Talk a little
what
bit about like his story and what brought him to the platform in the first part.
Yeah, art. So for those who aren't familiar with Art and don't know who he was, Art was a professional speaker, a very successful one. He passed away at the age of 40. He was a loving father. He was a husband. He enjoyed athletics. He was active in rugby, and he had set a world record for an ultra marathon of 325 miles. So he went from Salt Lake City, Utah to St. George, which is ultra marathon.
What people
And
need to know though is that's in a wheelchair because
yes,
we didn't mention yet, was Art a quadriplegic or paraplegic?
he was a quadriplegic. So yeah, those accomplishments, being involved in athletics that way, rugby and the ultra marathon, are even more impressive when you know that he did it as a quadriplegic.
Now, if for those of you who ever watch us over on the YouTube channel, I'm going to hold up a poster that I just found this weekend in my basement. This was such a timely conversation. I'll describe it for you all who are listening in. There's a lot of shadows on it, but it's at the bottom it says unsubdued, invincible, unconquered, Invictus. And Invictus was a part of Art's brand. But what the it's a picture of him uh, wheeling uphill in the middle of all these mountains, I'm assuming in Utah.
That was actually on his ultra marathon. Yeah, so that's southern Utah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And here's the slogan. And I want this slogan has stuck with me for 20, obviously. I think I've known Art, probably, I knew Art probably 25 years ago or more. While the difficult takes time, the impossible just takes a little longer. That language has locked, it's been seared into my brain, and I don't know, and I have a horrible memory. I don't know that I'll ever forget it. And I just really wanted to honor Art. And I'm so like thrilled that we have this 20th anniversary to kind of work it
Mhm.
around. That was a happy accident. But he died very suddenly. He was a kind of a healthy man. And
Yeah.
was it a complication of his?
It was it
Uh,
was a, it was a complication with some of the medicine that he had to take as a quadriplegic. There's some things that have to be managed in
mm,
that situation, and yeah, it was very unexpected. He was 39 years old actually, and he was so successful as a speaker. He was really at the top of his game then. He had a great, I think his fee was, and this is back in 2002. I think his fee was almost 20,000 for a
yeah,
keynote back then, which was a
that
lot
was
back then.
almost unheard of. And so, I was working at the time under the roof of International Speakers Bureau in Dallas, and I worked under that roof for 6 years and 4 years for Vince Pacenti and 2 years for the Bureau running their exclusives division. And I'm pretty sure I met Art at one of my very early on NSA conventions, National Speakers Association. And Vince and I watched, he and Vince were kind of going along head to head. I think they
Hmm.
had done a bureau showcase together, and it was like, ooh, Vince and Art were the two that really shone at this particular event. But then all of a sudden, we saw Art just like catastrophically, like
Yeah.
catapult off in a
Yeah.
direction. Is like, dude. So we cornered him one day and said, hey, what are you doing? What changed? Like the trajectory of your career so dramatically. And you know what he said, Dave? It was, I figured out a way to make it about them.
Uh, that
So
sounds just like something Art would say. Yeah.
this is a man who's in a wheelchair. It could easily be all about his accident,
Yeah.
or all about him.
Yeah.
It could so easily just be his story.
Yeah.
But instead, he said, what are the mountains that
Make
you
it about
have to
them.
climb? He tried to figure out a way after each of his teachings to turn it around and make it about them. And if you can do that in your speaking business, his fee went from 10 to 20 overnight
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
just because of that one change. He's the one who told us that it was that change.
And you know what's cool about that as well, Jane, is that Art did that in his professional life, but he was also that way in his personal life. I mean, people who were in Art's circle, you felt, everybody felt special to Art. You felt like he was looking for ways to help you. He was looking for things that he could do for you, ways to make your life better. And he did that for everybody around him.
And
And
so that is so interesting because I wanted to ask you what you think. So, Art was the founder of eSpeakers.
yeah,
He created this thing partly out of necessity, I think. You clarify for this. I'm thinking it was partly out of necessity. He saw something that needed to be developed way back before, technology and apps were a thing. I mean, he was the idea. He had this idea. And then I'm wondering if he didn't have a little bit of legacy in mind, like how long being in a wheelchair and traveling, you guys, is so,
it's
so,
brutal.
so difficult.
Yeah, it is
I have
brutal.
many clients who are, I don't know if there's a better term for it these days than handicapped, but they're handicapped in some way. It's
Right.
difficult for them to travel. And for Art, I can't even imagine. I
Yeah.
can't even imagine.
Yeah.
So, why do you think he created eSpeakers?
Well, I know the primary reason at the beginning was that he wanted Art recognized that the tools he was using general purpose tools for everything. So that his office had some things in a spreadsheet and had travel plans in a Word document and had a big paper calendar on the wall. That was the calendar was a paper one on the wall, right? This is back in 2000, 1999. And Art recognized that if he wasn't using some better tools, it was going to slow him down. It was going to hold him back. He was never going to reach his business potential with those
Ah,
general purpose tools. And so that's actually where Art's circle and my circle intersected, because I was running a small IT company back then. And Art hired us to make a custom business management system for him. It was based around a calendar, and it would be specialized for the speaking industry. And Art knew that if he could nail that, it would take the lid off his business, right? I mean, the ceiling would go away and he could
so he
go
wasn't
further.
thinking about getting off the road necessarily. He was just thinking, I can only go so far with a spreadsheet.
Yeah, yeah. At that point in time, he had just been made he was the incoming president of the National Speakers Association.
Oh, I didn't
He'd
even
gotten his
remember that.
CPAE, his Hall of Fame award, the year before.
Ah,
So I don't know that at that point he was thinking about getting off the road. He was swinging hard.
okay, okay, that's
So
really good. That's
yeah,
really interesting.
yeah,
So, okay, this started out, and one little interesting side note was, I'm pretty sure I was still working for Vince Vicenti at the time.
yeah,
You and I worked together because Vince and I were beta testers
yeah.
for this new, and what I remember, tell me if I'm wrong about this, was really just meant to be a calendar management tool.
Yeah,
And
it was.
and where it's come in 20 years, blows my mind, Dave. And a lot of people, I think, who have, free memberships to eSpeakers are like, yeah, I don't know if eSpeakers really has done anything for me lately. And I'm always thinking, well, have you used all of the things that it's capable
Yeah.
of? So we're always kind of running through the checklist. Well, did you use this? Have you done this? And so let's fast forward. So it started out as a place to organize all of the things about an event, and it's still that today. So if you ship boxes, you can put the tracking numbers in there. If you have a conference call with the client, you can put the conference call in there. It's got all the, of course, the logistics, the dates and times. You can even put a little check mark beside all the stories that you've told. You can build all your own customized checklists of what you do in order to collect this money. It can shoot out your calendar to all the speakers bureaus if you want it to. What am I leaving off, Dave? What else can it do that I haven't even this is just the calendar part, you guys.
Yeah, yeah. It will write your contracts for you, so you can put your contract templates in there, your thank you letters, any Word or Excel spreadsheet that you have to generate for every event. You put it in there once as a template, and then you just click a button and it's done.
Now, it's not a CRM, but you guys partnered with, talk about kind of what the newest rendition is and that you've partnered with a CRM. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. So we are part of GigOS, and you can check that out at thegigos.com.
Okay,
It's
so you're going to have to spell that.
yeah, so THEGIGOS.
Oh, the Gig
.com.
OS.
The
Okay,
Gig OS, like operating system.
I got it. It sounded a little too much like Gigolo, so I got really confused.
That's another website that we're now.
Gig OS
Yeah,
operating system.
the
Okay,
Gig
I get
OS. Yeah,
it. Gig
the
OS.
Gig
All
OS.
right. So you could, if we wanted to recommend like kind of an all-in-one encompassing system, does the Gig OS do um, campaigns like
Yeah,
sending out? Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
That's very interesting. I'm going to
yeah.
check that out, Dave, and we'll put it in the show notes as well. So there's a lot. So okay, we started as a calendar management tool, and here's what I want to just remember with you and have a little giggle about. Remember when I would say to you, "Hey Dave, how cool would it be if we could?"
Yeah.
And then you would go and make whatever my little
Yeah.
wish was come
Yeah.
true. And it could have been like, I'd like to be able to track the boxes of books, or I don't know. I don't remember what I was saying to you back then, but I just remember that I would give you the list and then you would go off and add it to the platform. And that just made me so happy.
Yeah, yeah, that was fun. You know what? The platform was growing so fast back then, and this is really fun for me because it was all generated from feedback by these other successful speakers and their offices, right? So yeah, you and I had so many conversations where you said, "Hey, what if we could do this?" and we'd do it. And it was the neat thing too is that over 20 years, we've continued to do that. In fact, just before we started this call, I oversaw a launch this morning that added a couple of little adjustments to Event CX, the calendar, that were suggestions from users. That's how most of our business grows, is suggestions from users who are doing successful things with it.
Very cool. Well, I want to talk about your users and the successful things that, kind of best practices and things that you think that that some of your users have really adopted in order to grow their businesses. But before we do that, just kind of walk me through the journey and the growth of your company. So many of our listeners probably also know Joe Heaps. Dave Reed and Joe Heaps have been at CAPS events. That's the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. NSA events. You've had partnerships with the National Speakers Associations. And so some of those people get access to kind of like your basic free account. Is that right? Or they get access to a basic account, which is very fortunate for them. And they may not really know what to do with it. But talk about kind of where you guys have come we just see you year after year, but we really haven't seen the evolution of eSpeakers and where it is today.
So as we've been discussing, we started off with Art's business management calendar, especially for speakers, super
Right.
calendar that would do all these great things.
Right.
And excuse me. And I'll say one little thing about that before I move on to how we moved, and that is that we were one of the very first, I mean, like a handful of softwares that were doing all of the data in the cloud. This was actually many years before the term the cloud existed.
Yes.
And yeah, so we were really unusual that way, and it was very innovative, and it was so fun. I don't know that this ever happened to you, Jane, but I know we had several customers who called us up and they're freaked out. And they say, "Oh my gosh, my laptop died and I lost all my eSpeakers data," because you have everything in there, right? My laptop died, I lost all my eSpeakers data. And it was so fun to be able to say to them, "No problem, just install eSpeakers on your new computer, sign in, your data is all there. You never lost it."
Oh no, you didn't. You didn't
Yeah,
use it all. It's right there. How beautiful
right
is
there.
that?
Yeah,
Like that really introduced me to the whole cloud concept.
yep,
And we, of course, just logged in and got to see all of our stuff weighed out there, which meant that the speaker who's traveling is pulling it up on their phone and I'm making like live up to date.
yep.
I was managing a speaker at that point, Vince Pacenti, and I would be putting in things and then boof, it would show up when he lands on the plane at the airport. He can actually see the things that I've sent him, which is really, really cool.
Back in 1999, that was unusual, right? That was like cutting edge.
That was amazing. I think he had like a Palm Pilot back then or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
So funny. Uh, so okay,
But
so
so back to your question. So we started off with the Event CX calendar, and a few years later, and this idea primarily came from my business partner Joe Heaps, and we were having speakers were having so much trouble keeping bureaus updated. Art worked with a lot of speakers bureaus, and I know Vince did as well. Worked with a lot of speakers bureaus,
he did.
and every time you adjusted your fee, or every time you had a new publicity photo, or you got a new award, you had to make phone calls to, I mean, probably Vince and Art were on maybe 20, 30, 40 different speakers bureaus.
Yes. Yes,
And
so true.
and it was a big deal. It was weeks worth of work to call around and make all those changes, and make sure that the bureaus had updated all of their marketing material,
Yeah.
as well as your own website, right? And so these things that were changing fairly frequently were really a maintenance item that was a lot of overhead and a lot of expense. I'll tell you, it got really expensive. You might have seen this with Vince, but I know Art had a couple of bureaus who he would send around, "Hey, my fee is now, 19,000. My fee is now 20,000." They didn't update their material, and so they sold them at 16,
Yeah.
right, or 15, and
Yeah.
that's a problem. Going
Yeah.
back, yeah, that's an issue.
And imagine if you're like, okay, I'm gonna take off 2 weeks in July. You go into the calendar, you mark off 2 weeks in July. The next day, a speakers bureau is wondering, are you available in
Yeah,
mid-July? And they see, oh, there it looks like it's blocked off for something personal.
yeah.
Okay, I'm not gonna submit this speaker for that. That's how like real time the information could be updated by connecting you. Now, you don't have to have access, allow speakers bureaus to put holds on your calendar without talking to you first, do you, Dave?
No, you
It-
can make
it's
everything very
all
private. Yeah,
right. So you can, though, say, okay, keep my updated information on my profile by allowing my bio and my headshot and my fee schedule and all of that to go out to the Speakers Bureau's website, right?
that's
And
right.
NSA and CAPS and
Yeah.
places like
Yeah,
that.
so you can allow your availability calendar to be published out to those different places and let bureaus have access to it. And when it's published out on any of the directories where we publish you, it can be shown there. Again, you can choose not to have it shown there, but you can show it there.
Yeah, and so the reason why a speaker might prefer to stay to be able to have a conversation is if a bureau looks them up, sees that they're already booked, they may move on in their brain to just another speaker, like lickety split, because that's how we roll at speakers bureaus. That's how I used to roll. But if you got on the phone and figured out, well, wait a second, this is in this location, this is in this location, maybe I can make that work, or this client's flexible, maybe we can back it up a day. It allowed you to explore the opportunity without just letting it pass you by without a conversation. And so that might be why somebody limit what they can.
That was one reason. That was one reason. And we actually mostly solved that problem by adding to if the speaker allows their calendar to be displayed, then we would also display the location with the date. So we weren't giving away client names or anything, but we would show that they're booked in this city, in Scottsdale, Arizona, and that lets whoever's shopping that speaker say, "Oh, Scottsdale. Well, we're just down the road. He could probably do something for us as well."
And
But
in the hold system, Dave, if you placed a hold as a speakers bureau, if you placed a hold, would another bureau be able to see the city that the first hold was on?
no,
They can't see any information
no,
about holds.
no,
Just that
nothing about a hold.
okay. All right. Fair enough.
Yep. And so the other reason we hear, and this is the most common one, for speakers not to share their availability calendar, is that they don't have enough on there, that their calendar looks too thin.
Yes. And during COVID, we would see that even more than perhaps 4 or 5 years ago. So I get that. So it's fine. I have popped up when I was doing a lot of live events. I have popped up the calendar and used it and pulled it right into my website. Found it very helpful to be able to have that. Okay. So we had the calendar situation. Then we started to be able to connect to the bureaus. But then you kept going. There was more steps. You mentioned directories earlier. Talk about what you mean when you open up a speaker to directories.
So back, I don't even remember the year, but it's been a while. But a few years after we made the connection between speakers and speakers bureaus, we had, I think that the National Speakers Association might have been the first one who said, "Hey, you've got all this information about speakers, and we need a directory for our website, and a member directory for our website. So help us out there." So we published the speakers directory for the National Speakers Association, and several other associations. In fact, we power most of the national speaker associations and most of the chapter directories as well now.
Awesome.
Cool. As you mentioned, the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers, CAPS, we've been great friends with CAPS for a lot of years.
And so let's put in a plug for people to make sure that they are keeping their eSpeakers profile up to date, because it affects you in many, many different ways. And I like that you have a score, a marketing score that gets the competitive juices flowing. It's like, ooh, I gotta get a better score than that. Let me go in, add some videos, do some stuff to make sure that my eSpeakers profile looks current. And so you want to make sure that you're taking advantage of that and have the most updated pieces in your profile. And you've even added the last year or 2 years, I guess it was now, a virtual element. You did a virtual certification that people could check the box. Yes, they are virtual ready. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, there are a couple of things that you can do as far as virtual goes. The first one is there is a box you can check that says, "I do virtual presentations." And most speakers by now have checked that box to let buyers know.
Yes.
And when I use the term buyers, Jane, I'm talking about event organizers, meeting planners, bureau reps, right? People who hire speakers.
Corporate buyers. Yeah,
corporate buyers. Or it could be association, right? Anybody who would hire a professional speaker. So there's that checkbox, and most speakers have checked that. There's also a certification. And this is something that you have to earn by passing a, not exactly an exam, but we go on and you connect with one of our certifiers and over Zoom, and they take you through a checklist. There's almost 20 different points that they check. And this is not qualifying how good of a presenter you are. So this does not compete with like the
Saying,
CSP.
are you ready?
Yeah, it's just saying that your audio, visual, and technical skills are up to snuff and that you won't make a buyer look bad on a remote presentation, on an online presentation.
Love that you did that. It was very timely and
Yeah.
it felt like you were kind of just moving with the moments. Talk about marketplace. Is that, am I at, you're all of everything that you've done, Dave? I am in awe of it, but I often wonder, do I have the language right? Is that what it's called, marketplace?
Yeah. No, you got it. You got it. Marketplace.
Okay.
So that kind of continues our journey on. At this point in time, we'd really help speakers dial in their office setting, right? A speaker office running on eSpeakers is humming along like a top if they're using it correctly.
Right.
And what we were hearing from our customers then was, help me get more business, right? This is great. You've helped me handle what I've got efficiently. Now
Yes.
help me get more. And so we were publishing these directories for associations, and we started doing it for speakers bureaus as well. And we said, you know what? Let's do this under our own brand as well, and we can market this out to event organizers. And so we started our own directory. We used the same technology that we were using for associations and chapters and other speakers bureaus.
Right.
We just put it up for ourselves with one big change. And that was that on our marketplace platform, the contracting and payment happened all in system, which was very cool. And so now this is the kind of convenience that buyers had become used to with Uber and Airbnb, right? That you can contract, that you can research, contract, and pay all through the platform. Now we were offering that in the speaking world.
That's
And yeah, as far as I know, we were the first ones to do that.
Is there a little percentage there? Like, are they paying by credit card? How are people paying to keep it all under the one umbrella like that?
Yep. So the buyers are allowed to pay via credit card. They can also pay with a wire or an ACH transfer. We even allow them to send a paper check in if that's how they need to do. And
Okay.
we act as the clearinghouse for that. It all comes through us.
Okay.
We do take a finder's fee because we're bringing new work to speakers that they wouldn't have had.
Yes.
So we charge a finder's fee, and that varies from time to time. And then the work goes on to the speaker, and the money gets deposited in the speaker's bank account for them.
And the finder's fee is lower than a speaker's bureau. Do you want to talk about percentages or anything like that?
Yeah, the finder's fee varies from 10% up to about 25%, depending on the directory that a buyer finds you through.
Okay.
And I mentioned that our own marketplace brand is a place where buyers come, and we promote this, and we spend marketing money bringing buyers into this. But we have also put up the same technology for other companies so that they can promote their own directory, bring buyers into that. And then the finder's fee, a little bit goes to them because they spent marketing money. A little bit to us as the platform, and then the balance onto the speaker. So depending on which directory they came through, the percentage will vary, but it's almost always lower than what a traditional speakers bureau would be. Yeah.
And a speakers bureau, you would always hand the spinoff back. What is the situation for eSpeakers?
So we hope that we're the other big difference between us and a speakers bureau, a traditional speakers bureau, is that when a buyer contracts with a speaker through our platform, the agreement is directly between the buyer and the speaker.
Okay.
We're not a party. So in a traditional bureau model, the buyer contracts with the bureau, and then the bureau turns around and contracts with the speaker, right? They're in the middle of that. And we're not. We help the buyer make a contract right with the speaker, and we're just a facilitator for that.
You'd like it to happen that people would
Yes.
run the contract back through the next time as well, but It's not built in that all spin-off needs to come back to you.
Yeah, it's not built in, it's not contractual. We would like that. We want it to be that way.
Yeah.
The buyers have good experiences and the speakers have good experiences. And
Yeah.
so it works well, but it's
Okay.
not in the contract that you have to.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. All right. Is there any other? Oh, let's talk for a second about bureau blasts because I have a client who had said, "Hey, I've up for my yearly renewal with eSpeakers. I'm deciding what to do." And so we ran through the checklist and I said, "When's the last time you did a bureau blast?" And she says, "Oh, I've never done one." I said, "Okay, let's go look at your profile, make sure we've got it all beautiful the way we want it to be. And then let's have you do a bureau blast because you never know, one bureau picking you up could pay for your whole year for eSpeakers."
Yep.
And so tell everybody how that works.
Bureau Blast is Bureau Blast helps you get more exposure to speakers bureaus. That's what it
Okay.
does. So if you're, and it's not for everybody.
Right. If you're
Because
not,
not,
let's just talk about that for a second. I want to make sure speakers understand that if your fee is, let's say under $7,500 and sometimes even under 10, and you don't have a really, really, really strong demo video, you may not quite be ready for speakers bureaus yet. I have lots of programming inside our school about when you're ready.
yeah. And because those criteria you just mentioned are generally where speakers bureaus start to look at speakers, right? They generally don't look at them underneath 10,000.
Mhm.
They need to have really a great demo reel and be pretty established that way before the bureaus are.
I will say that we probably will have, I'm just interviewing a speakers bureau, my next interview today, and we probably will have some exceptions to those numbers.
Definitely,
Just
definitely.
know that there might be some smaller bureaus who are like, "Hey, I'm booking 7,500 all the time, 5,000 all the time. I really would like to know." But typical and the
Yeah,
bigger ones. So we're just speaking in big, big generalities there.
yeah,
And so you wouldn't want to go out too soon. So let's say
right,
this. Okay,
right.
so
You're right.
you decide that you're like, "Hey, I'm bureau ready. Let me go ahead and do a bureau blast." What does that look like? That's a paid extra that you
Yeah,
offer,
it's a
correct?
paid extra, although there's a huge discount. So the Bureau Blast is normally 850, and it's a good deal at that.
Mhm.
And it takes your marketing material that you have in for your eSpeakers profile. It makes this gorgeous HTML email out of it for you. You don't have to do anything. That we build that for you, and
Mm.
then we send that out to our Rolodex of bureau reps at I think there are just shy of 400 bureau reps in our Rolodex. And so that goes out to a lot of bureau reps. And the alternative to this, what speakers are doing if they don't do bureau blast, is they're putting together this packet, right? And mailing it out or trying to do cold email out to all these bureaus if they can get their contact information. And
Mhm.
it's expensive, it's time consuming. We've got a really good open rate on ours. I think the open rate for most commercial email is like 2 or 3%. You're happy if you get that. We're seeing 15, we're seeing close to 20% open rates on this because the bureaus know us, right?
Yeah.
And they're happy to
They
get
know,
these.
like, and trust
Yeah,
when they see something coming through from eSpeakers, it's not going to be a waste of their time.
yeah.
That's
So
really
850 is actually a great bargain for this with all the time it saves. But if you're a plus or pro level eSpeakers member, then I would take, I think, 500 off of that.
It's big,
So
pretty deep
yeah,
discount. So,
yeah,
like I said, to be able one even at 850, 1 gig booked through bureaus and a relationship could be the next 10 years,
yep,
it could pay off in spades. So that's
yep,
really well worth it. So
yep.
you mentioned that you have different levels. If we wanted to introduce people who have never heard of e-speakers before to you, Dave, what should we do? Let's put a link on our show notes page. What can we offer people to help them understand who you are and go see what this is all about?
Before we hit that though, just before we leave Bureau Blast, I want to mention that we also a couple of years ago put up a Planner Blast.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Planner
Yeah.
Blast, which does the same type of thing, except instead of going to
To
bureau reps,
marketplace.
it goes to our database of around 10,000 event organizers. So these are people at corporations and associations who hire speakers. And yeah, and so again, you're
Cost on
able to,
that too, Dave.
yeah. The cost on that is $2,000 for that. Although for Plus and Pro members right now, you can get that for $950.
Hmm. Okay,
Yeah,
that's a deal.
yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, you
I,
bet.
is there anything else that you want to talk about before we move on to how people can get to know you
No,
better?
let's move on. We'll probably pick up a couple more things along the way, but
Okay.
let's go to how to get to know us.
Okay. So what would you suggest is our first step here?
Well, if you want to learn about what eSpeakers does for you as a speaker, the best place to start is our website. Just go to www.espeakers. That's ESPEAKERS. Jeannie probably put a link in the show notes for that, right?
Will. Yes.
And on our homepage, there's one pathway for event organizers who want to hire speakers, and then there's another pathway for people who are speakers or coaches or trainers, experts. And they
Great.
want to follow that path, obviously.
Beautiful.
Yep. And
That is amazing. Now, before we wrap up, just talk about you have watched the careers of so many speakers. We were just talking, and you and I have probably known each other for what we think about maybe 20 plus years,
yeah,
which is
wow.
really amazing, maybe 23 years. So you have watched your users, your customers, and your friends. These have become, long-term friends now. Really watch their careers blossom and catapult in many different ways. What would you say would be the difference between the person who, like Vince and I were there watching Art and saying, what the heck is he doing? Like this, like a rocket ship, and we're watching him just take off to the sky. What would you say would be the difference between someone who might be struggling and the people who have really catapulted?
I would say, and I'm gonna filter this group down to people who have good stage content, who have good stage presence, and they've got a compelling speech, because there's so many people in both groups, right? Those who have catapulted and those who haven't, who both have great content and good presence on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
So the difference between people who are just going crazy and those who are still struggling a little bit and they both have good content is that I see the catapulting group being really intentional about the business of speaking. And I know that's probably not a revelation to people, but it's something that you have to think about. And it's something that you actually have to execute and take action on. And Jane, I know you teach a lot about this. And I got to say, as you mentioned, we have known each other for a long time. And I've got to give you some kudos back for what you're doing with the Wealthy Speaker School, because I know that so many speakers have benefited from what you're teaching.
Thank you.
And yeah, and and I'd love to see that, because I do have so many friends in this business now. And everybody who makes the tide rise higher, it's good for all of us. It's
It
good. It's
really
good for the industry.
I'll give you something that we talk about inside the school. Two things. So you want to know what the big secret is? The big secret sauce that makes somebody really, really successful? It's two things. Number one, the first sale is to yourself. You need to believe in your product. Your stage, your speech, your signature, whatever it is, you need to believe in that like nobody's business. The first sale is to yourself. So your belief is number one. And then number two is consistent action.
Yep.
Just play, and this is kind of this intentional business that you just mentioned. Consistent action in the right direction. And it is what I think that we provide at the school. We have this ready, aim, fire process that we walk people through. It's been the same formula. that put, Ryan Estes on the map from zero to millions of dollars a year. Kendra Hall, all of the people have been using the ready, aim, fire process to really get there. And I think I think that with a part of what we are talking about, and a part we just talked about in the scaling book, is this systems are really an important part of that
Yeah,
consistency.
yeah, they definitely are. Your systems have to be there, and I love what you just said about your first sale being to yourself. You've got to believe in that. And you know what, Jane, this is a great place. I want everybody to know what eSpeakers mission statement is, because it flows right along with that.
Nice.
At eSpeakers, we have seen that when the right presenter is on the right stage, there's a magic that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And audiences, the organization and individuals can improve in long-term important ways that make lives better. And so our mission here at eSpeakers is to help that happen more often. We want to help speakers be on the stage doing their thing more often. And that's how we do our good in the world, is helping them do their good in the world.
I love that.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
it's and speakers who believe in themselves, who believe in their message, who believe in what it does for audiences, and then who are deliberate and intentional about the business, right? It's
Hmm.
not enough. That message is not enough on its own. If you want to really take off, you've
So
got to
good.
be deliberate about the business.
So circling back to Art Berg, he did not believe that he could scale his business using spreadsheets.
Right.
And I think that was an idea that was maybe way ahead of its time and so profound. And I want to say kudos to him. And if anybody would like, I hope you can go out to YouTube and Google Art Berg. Berg is B-U-R-G. No, sorry,
BERG. Yeah.
Artberg, Berg. Google it and maybe see if you can see a little bit of his presentation. I
He was
think
so good on the stage.
he
So
was
good.
so brilliant
Yeah.
on the stage and off the stage as a
Yeah.
businessman. So you cannot scale your business on spreadsheets alone. You really need some systems and tools in place.
Yeah.
And that has been what we were talking about today. The systems and tools you need for scaling. Maybe that'll be the title of our show, Dave.
I like it. I like it.
I'm
Scale
going to
it.
put Art Berg into the title though, because I really want people to see that we're talking about art.
The Berg scaling method.
Yes,
It
exactly.
sounds like we're cleaning fish, though, doesn't it?
Art Berg's system to scaling. There
There
we
you
go.
go.
Okay.
All right. I like it.
All right. Well, thank you for being on the show with us today. eSpeakers.com is the place that you can find Dave Reed. And I just appreciate you. I appreciate all that you've done. I appreciate what nice guys you and Joe have been throughout the 20 years that I've known you both. And I know that our listeners will have gotten a lot out of this.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Jane. I certainly hope so. Thank you.
And for those of you listening in, I hope to hear some feedback, people. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon, Wealthy Speakers. Bye for now.